The bright city skyline of New York City gleamed through the studio windows, casting a soft glow over the high-tech set. It was the kind of morning that promised something extraordinary, the kind where everything felt poised for a breakthrough. For Melania Trump, the rare public appearance felt like a carefully orchestrated performance, one that she had been preparing for months. Today's interview with one of America's most prominent talk show hosts wasn't just another routine conversation. It was an opportunity to reshape her narrative and show the world who she was after her time in the White House. The excitement in the air was palpable. Melania had always been known for her measured, composed public persona. Ever since leaving the White House, she had kept a relatively low profile, speaking occasionally about her charitable work or giving brief glimpses into her life, but never truly opening up about herself or her family. The public had always been fascinated by Melania's privacy, especially when it came to her son, Barron Trump. As the youngest member of the Trump family, Barron had been the subject of endless speculation. His life was hidden in the shadows of his parents' larger-than-life media presence, and to many, he had become something of a mystery. Melania had made it clear from the beginning that she would do everything in her power to shield Barron from the overwhelming attention that came with being part of the first family. She had made it a point to protect him from the cameras, the scrutiny, and the media circus that came with being a public figure. While Donald Trump was often at the center of the spotlight, Melania was the calm and composed force keeping her family grounded. On the set of the talk show, the host was preparing for what would be an unforgettable interview. His team had worked meticulously on a list of topics, carefully designed to probe into Melania's post-White House life, her charity work, and her vision for the future. As they rehearsed the script, there was an unspoken understanding that this interview would be different from anything else Melania had done. It was her chance to speak directly to the world, to let her voice be heard without the constraints of political office. The stage was set, and the cameras were rolling as Melania took her seat, elegantly dressed in a sleek, high-fashion ensemble. Her poise was undeniable, and the world watched in anticipation as the host greeted her with a warm, genuine smile. The interview began smoothly, with the host asking about her experiences in the White House and her role as First Lady. Melania responded with grace and composure, recounting moments of both triumph and difficulty during her tenure. But then, as the conversation shifted from the public sphere to the personal, the interviewer asked a question that stopped everyone in their tracks. It was an innocent enough question, but it had the potential to change the entire dynamic of the conversation. "Melania, I have to ask," the interviewer said, leaning forward slightly with a knowing smile. "It's a question that has intrigued the public for quite some time. How tall is Barron Trump?" The question hung in the air like a heavy weight, and for a brief moment, the room seemed to hold its collective breath. The production crew, the camera operators, and even Melania herself seemed to pause in anticipation. It wasn't a question anyone had expected, and yet it was one that had lingered in the public's mind for years. Barron's rapid growth had been a topic of conversation for much of his adolescence. Over the past few years, there had been numerous rumors about his height, with some claiming that he had already surpassed his father, Donald Trump, who stood at 6'3". But Barron had always remained a private figure, away from the spotlight that so often consumed the rest of the Trump family. The interviewer, sensing Melania's slight hesitation, quickly added, "I know it's a bit of an unusual question, but people have been so curious about Barron's growth over the years. From his early childhood to now, he's been growing at an impressive rate. It seems like he's already taller than both of you." Melania, ever the professional, took a deep breath before responding. She had always been cautious about discussing Barron in public, and her instincts told her to be careful. But something about the interviewer's tone, genuine, respectful, and curious, made her feel like this was an opportunity to share something personal, something that wasn't just about Barron's height, but about the kind of person he was becoming. She paused for a moment before smiling softly. "Well, Barron has certainly grown quite a bit in recent years," she said, her voice calm but tinged with a hint of affection. "Last time I checked, he was around 6'7", but honestly, I haven't measured him in a while. He's still growing, and I'm sure he'll surprise us even more." The interviewer's eyes widened, clearly not expecting such an open and personal response. The camera zoomed in on Melania, capturing her expression, as the room was filled with a quiet sense of astonishment. Barron's height had always been a topic of fascination, but Melania's response revealed something far more profound. She wasn't just talking about his physical stature, she was speaking with a deep sense of pride about the young man he was becoming. Melania continued, her voice steady and deliberate. But height is not the most important thing about Barron. What I'm most proud of is the person he is becoming. He's a kind, thoughtful young man with a great heart. That's what truly matters. The interviewer, now visibly moved by her words, nodded in understanding. He had expected a brief, factual answer, but what he had received, was something far more meaningful. Melania wasn't just discussing her son's growth in terms of physical attributes. She was discussing the growth of his character, his personality, and his future. As the interview continued, Melania opened up more about Barron's life. She shared stories of how he had always been mature for his age, how he had a natural empathy and compassion for others. She spoke about his quiet, introspective nature, and how he had managed to remain grounded despite the overwhelming attention that came with being the son of a former president. The interview shifted into a deeper conversation about Melania's relationship with Barron and how she had made it a priority to shield him from the public eye. She explained how important it was for her to ensure that he could experience a sense of normalcy despite the extraordinary circumstances of his life. "I want Barron to have a childhood that's as normal as possible," Melania said, her voice filled with conviction. "He deserves to be able to grow up without the weight of the world on his shoulders. I will always protect him from the media's gaze so he can discover who he is without distractions." The interviewer, moved by her dedication, responded, "It's clear that you care deeply about Barron's well-being and that you're doing everything you can to give him a sense of privacy and normalcy. He's fortunate to have a mother like you." Melania smiled, her expression softening. "Thank you. But he's the one who's special. I'm just here to support him." With that, the conversation turned back to the broader topics of Melania's post-White House life, but the impact of her words lingered in the air. The audience, both in the studio and at home, had witnessed a rare moment of vulnerability from Melania Trump, and they had glimpsed a side of her that few had ever seen before. The unexpected question about Barron's height had led to a much deeper conversation about family, love, and the importance of protecting the ones we care about. Melania had shared something with the world that was far more valuable than any physical measurement: the love and pride she felt for her son, and the deep desire to see him grow into a compassionate and grounded young man. The interview had taken a turn none of them had expected. What began as a seemingly innocent question about Barron Trump's height had revealed something much deeper: the fierce, unwavering love and protection that Melania had for her son. The audience, still digesting her words, could sense the emotional depth of the conversation. Melania was no longer just the former First Lady. She was a mother, fiercely protective of her child, and unapologetically determined to shield him from the harsh glare of public life. As the interview progressed, the host attempted to steer the conversation back toward lighter, less personal topics, but Melania's response had lingered in the air, leaving an indelible mark on the audience. The interview had quickly shifted from a typical celebrity chat to something much more profound, something real. The host could sense that he was on the edge of a breakthrough, and he knew that he had to tread carefully from here on out. However, just when it seemed that the conversation was settling into its new, more intimate rhythm, something entirely unexpected happened. The interviewer's tone became noticeably lighter, almost playful, as he leaned in with a new question, one that was bound to test Melania's composure. "Melania," the interviewer said, his voice shifting, "you've spoken so openly about Barron's growth and how you've always been there for him. But I have to ask, as a mother, is there anything about Barron's growth that you find particularly surprising? An thing that's caught you off guard?" Melania paused, her expression softening for a split second. She thought about the question. It wasn't just about Barron's height anymore. It was about all the surprises that came with watching a child grow up. There were moments of joy, but also moments of uncertainty. As she stared across the table at the interviewer, she realized that this was another opportunity for her to speak candidly, to share a piece of her truth with the world. She took a deep breath and smiled, her calm, poised demeanor never faltering. Well, I think every mother can relate to the surprise of seeing your child grow before your eyes. It's not just the physical changes, it's also the emotional and mental growth. Barron is becoming such a thoughtful young man, and it's not always easy to accept that he's not a little boy anymore. She laughed softly, the sound genuine, not forced. One of the most surprising things about Barron, though, is his sense of independence. He's always been a very private person, even as a child. He doesn't share a lot about what's going on in his life, and that's something that has both surprised and amazed me. He's very self-sufficient for someone his age. He knows what he wants, and he's confident in who he is. As she spoke, the interviewer could sense that he was hearing a side of Melania that the public rarely got to see, a side of her that was filled with pride, yet tinged with a mother's concern for the future. The interview had suddenly taken on an entirely different tone. It was no longer just about the public perception of the Trumps. It was about the personal, emotional journey of a mother raising her son in the midst of unprecedented challenges. But as the conversation continued, the interviewer, sensing an opportunity to push the boundaries even further, decided to ask a question that he had been holding back. He had been careful with his words so far, but now he felt that the time had come to delve deeper. "Melania," he began, his voice steady. "We've heard so much about Barron's growth, and we know how much you care for him. But I have to ask, especially given the public's fascination with him, how do you feel about the constant media scrutiny he faces? He's already taller than you and Donald, and yet he's still very much under the microscope. Does that bother you?" The room fell silent. The interviewer's question, while direct, was also personal, and it was a question that many had wondered about, but never dared to ask. How did Melania truly feel about Barron's life being so public? How did she cope with the idea of her son growing up in the shadow of the media's unrelenting gaze? Melania's face tightened ever so slightly, and for a brief moment, it seemed as though she might pull back into the safe, guarded persona that the world was used to. But then, as if remembering her role as a mother above all else, she leaned forward, her gaze focused and intense. "Of course it bothers me," she said softly, her voice strong but measured. "I wish Barron could have a more private life, that he could grow up without the constant attention. But it's the reality we live in. The media will always find something to focus on, whether it's his height or something else. And while I can't control that, what I can do is protect him. I can make sure that he knows his worth isn't defined by what others say or what they see." The words seemed to hang in the air, reverberating through the studio. Melania's response was a testament to her determination to shield her son from the toxicity of the public eye, and it was a moment of raw honesty that left everyone in the room silent. "I've always been a mother first," she continued, her voice gaining strength. "And as a mother, I will do everything in my power to protect my child. The media can say whatever they want, but Barron is not a public IC figure. He's my son. And I will always put his well-being above everything else." The interviewer nodded solemnly, clearly understanding the gravity of her words. He had asked the tough questions, but now it was clear that the conversation had shifted into something deeper, something more meaningful than the typical celebrity interview. It had become a dialogue about family, love, and the lengths to which a mother would go to protect her child. As the interview came to a close, the host thanked Melania for her time, her openness, and her courage in sharing such intimate thoughts with the world. The studio audience erupted into applause, and Melania stood up, her composure never wavering. She had shared more than anyone had anticipated, and in doing so, she had revealed a side of herself that few had ever seen, the fierce, protective mother behind the polished public figure. As she walked off the set, the cameras turned off, and the studio lights dimmed. Melania knew that her words would resonate long after the interview ended. She had spoken from the heart, and in doing so, she had allowed the world to see a different side of her, a side that was real, vulnerable, and above all, deeply human. And so the question about Barron's height, which had seemed so innocent at first, had led to a much more profound conversation. It wasn't just about how tall Barron had grown. It was about the mother's love, the lengths she would go to protect her son, and the quiet strength that she carried with her every day. For Melania Trump, this interview wasn't just an opportunity to share her thoughts on her son's growth. It was a reminder that even in the face of public scrutiny, The love of a mother could never be measured.